Hi, kindergartners. This story is called Chrysanthemum, and it's written and illustrated by Kevin Henkes. The day she was born was the happiest day in her parents' lives. "She's perfect," said her mother. "Absolutely," said her father, and she was absolutely perfect. "Her name must be everything she is," said her mother. "Her name must be absolutely perfect," said her father. And it was. Chrysanthemum. Her parents named her Chrysanthemum. I'm going to pause for a second. Do you know what a chrysanthemum is? It's a special kind of a flower that looks something like this. You can see even on her baby blanket, there are chrysanthemums. Chrysanthemum grew and grew and grew. And when she was old enough to appreciate it, Chrysanthemum loved her name. She loved the way it sounded when her mother woke her up. She loved the way it sounded when her father called her for dinner. She loved the way it sounded when she whispered to herself inside the bathroom mirror. "Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum." She loved the way her name looked when it was written in ink on an envelope. She loved the way it looked when it was written with icing on her birthday cake. She loved the way it looked when she wrote it herself in a fat orange crayon. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of letters in chrysanthemum. Wonder how many letters you have in your name. Chrysanthemum thought her name was absolutely perfect. And then she started school. On her first day, Chrysanthemum wore her sunniest dress and her brightest smile. She ran all the way to school. "Hooray!" said Chrysanthemum. "School!" Lola's being so noisy. Lola, quiet. I'm trying to read to the kids. But when Mrs. Chudd took roll call, everyone giggled when they heard Chrysanthemum's name. Let's look at some of the other names. Don, Evie, Lois, Al, Les, Kay, Mac, Sue, Bill. You know what I'm noticing about these names? They're not as long as Chrysanthemum. I wonder why kids are giggling. Maybe you could ask somebody near you why those kids are giggling. Maybe tell them what you think. "It's so long," said Joe. "It scarcely fits on her name tag," said Rita, pointing. "I'm named after my grandmother," said Victoria. "You're named after a flower," she said. Chrysanthemum wilted. Wilted is what a flower does when it doesn't have enough water. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. Suddenly, she thought it was absolutely dreadful. Dreadful means terrible. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and informed Mrs. Chudd that Chrysanthemum's name had 13 letters. "That's exactly half as many letters as there are in the entire alphabet," Victoria explained. "Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria," said Mrs. Chudd. "Now please put your head down." "If I had a name like yours, I would change it," Victoria said, as the students lined up to go home. "I wish I could change it," Victoria thought miserably. "Welcome home," said her mother. "Welcome home," said her father. "School is no place for me," Chrysanthemum said. "My name is too long. It scarcely fits on my name tag, and I am named after a flower." "Oh, pish," said her mother. "Your name is beautiful." "And precious, and priceless, and fascinating, and winsome," said her father. "It's everything you are," said her mother. absolutely perfect, said her father. She's getting some different ideas about her name, isn't she? Chrysanthemum felt much better after her favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese with ketchup, and an evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That's a board game that some people really like to play. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that her name was Jane. It was a very pleasant dream. Jane and Chrysanthemum sound very different, and they look very different too. The next morning, Chrysanthemum wore her most comfortable jumper. She walked to school as slowly as she could. She dragged her feet in the dirt. Chrysanthemum, 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 she wrote. She even looks like a flower, said Victoria as Chrysanthemum entered the playground. Let's pick her, said Rita, pointing. Let's smell her, Joe said. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. Dreadful means terrible, awful, yucky, the worst. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and said, a chrysanthemum is a flower. It lives in a garden with worms and other dirty things. Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria, said Mrs. Chudd. Now, put your head down. I just can't believe your name, Victoria said as the students lined up to go home. Neither can I, thought Chrysanthemum. Welcome home, said her mother. Welcome home, said her father. School is no place for me, said Chrysanthemum. They said I even look like a flower. They pretended to pick and smell me. Oh, pish, said her mother. They're just jealous. And envious and begrudging and discontented and jaundiced, said her father. He's using a lot of big words. Who wouldn't be jealous of a name like yours, said her mother. After all, it's absolutely perfect, said her father. Chrysanthemum felt a trifle better after her favorite dessert, chocolate cake with buttercream frosting, and another evening filled with kisses and hugs and parcheesi. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that she really was a flower, a chrysanthemum. She sprouted leaves and petals. Victoria picked her and plucked the leaves and the petals one by one until there was nothing left but a scrawny stem. It was the very worst nightmare of Chrysanthemum's life. Chrysanthemum wore her outfit with 7 pockets the next morning. She loaded the pockets with her most prized possessions and good luck charms. Chrysanthemum took the longest route possible to school. She stopped and she stared at every single flower. Chrysanthemum, 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 all the flowers seemed to say. That morning, the students were introduced to Mrs. Twinkle, the music teacher. Her voice was like something from a dream, as was everything about her. The students were speechless. If you're speechless, it means you're so amazed you don't know what to say. They thought Mrs. Twinkle was an indescribable wonder. They went out of their way to make a nice impression. Mrs. Twinkle led the class in scales. La 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 la. Then she assigned roles for the class musicale. Victoria was chosen as the dainty fairy queen. Rita was chosen as the spiffy butterfly princess. Jo was chosen as the all-important pixie messenger. And Chrysanthemum was chosen as a daisy. So a musicale is a fancy word for saying a play that has music in it. Chrysanthemum's a daisy, chrysanthemum's a daisy. Joe, Rita, and Victoria chanted, thinking it was wildly funny. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought her name was absolutely dreadful. "What's so humorous?" asked Mrs. Twinkle. "Chrysanthemum," the girls answered. "Her name is so long," said Joe. "It scarcely fits in her name tag," said Rita, pointing. "I'm named after my grandmother," Victoria said, "and she's named after a flower." Those girls need some help being kind. "My name is long," said Mrs. Twinkle. "It is. My name could scarcely fit on a name tag," she said. "It would," said Rita, pointing. "And," said Mrs. Twinkle, "I'm named after a flower, too." "You are?" asked Victoria. "Yes," said Mrs. Twinkle. "My name is Delphinium." Delphinium is another flower with a long name. Delphinium Twinkle. And if my baby is a girl, I'm considering Chrysanthemum as a name. I think it's absolutely perfect. I'm going to stop for a moment. Did you notice that this part of her dress is very big and round? You can see it over here too. She's having a baby. So when women are having a baby, the baby is inside right there, and it makes their tummy big and round, especially when it's almost time for the baby to come out. Chrysanthemum could scarcely believe her ears. She blushed, she beamed, she bloomed. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. How do you think she's feeling now that she knows that her favorite teacher loves her name so much that she might name her own daughter Chrysanthemum? I wonder how the other girls are feeling now that they have a different idea about that name. Joe and Rita and Victoria looked at Chrysanthemum longingly. "Call me Marigold," said Joe. "That's another flower." "I'm Carnation," said Rita, pointing. "My name is Lily of the Valley," said Victoria. Suddenly, those girls who were being so unkind now want to have flower names like Chrysanthemum and Miss Twinkle. Chrysanthemum did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She knew it. And this book has something special at the end. It's called an epilogue. An epilogue is what tells what happens after the ending. Epilogue. Overall, the class musicale was a huge success. Chrysanthemum was an absolutely perfect daisy. Victoria made the only mistake. She completely forgot her lines as the dainty fairy queen. Chrysanthemum thought it was wildly funny, and she giggled throughout the entire dance of flowers. Eventually, Mrs. Twinkle gave birth to a healthy baby girl, and of course, she named her Chrysanthemum. The end.